Hey, my name is Brent here on Cloudy with the Chance of Meeples. Today on the channel, we are looking at 3 different roll and writes in Des Papiers, a compilation of 3 roll and writes, as it says in the rules. I'm going to show you how each of these 3 play in the radar overview, so this review will be a little bit lengthier as a result, but I do want to talk about these 3 different games. One of them, 2 Serpents. The second one we're going to talk about is Roll and Cook Express. And then finally, Arturus Rex. So I'll show you those, how they play in that order, and then I will talk about my thoughts on each one of those individually, and then finally what I think of this box set of 3 roll and writes. So let me show you how these play. My final forecast coming up. Cue the thunder. So the radar overview for Des Papiers looks like this. I'm going to show you how each of these 3 games work. We're going to start with 2 Serpents. Then I will show you how the Roll and Cook Express works. And then finally, I will show you how Arturus Rex works. But let's start with 2 Serpents. In this game, you're going to be playing the blue player versus the red player, and you're going to be working in one of these 4 stadiums per se. And whoever can win, 2 of them first wins. So I guess you're playing, best 2 out of 3. So you won't use all of them. But in this one, you will play, you'll roll all 5 of these dice, and you'll set them up, and then you will draft them. Each player will go back and forth. You will pick, before you start, you'll pick one of these 4 arenas to play in, and then whoever, loses gets to pick the next one. But how does this work? Well, let's say this is what was rolled, and the blue player would start first. At that point, they would draft one of these dice, and depending on which side you're sitting on will reflect on how these dice work. So if I draft a 5, I can draw a line anywhere. Whereas if I draft this 2, I would have to move to the right. I'd have to move to my right. Whereas the red player, they would have to move to their left. Okay, so if the blue player would draft this 2, they could go like this. Whereas if the red player drafted the same 2, they would come this way. Okay. We're just going to leave that on for sake of example. I did that. Maybe the red player drafted that. At that point, I could draft maybe the 6 as the blue player. And you know what? I'm going to draft, let's go this way. Okay, as soon as you get to one of these little things, that's a Hydra, I can draw I can make another dot, and then I have technically 3 heads that I can work off of, because typically you can only go from one end of the line or the other. But if you get one of these Hydras, then you can branch off. If you ever get this one, you get an extra line immediately. And if you ever get these snake bites, you can then cut off the line of your opponent. So let's imagine, I drafted the 6. That's how I could go diagonal, because the 6 can go diagonal. That's the only one. Say then my opponent, they take the 3. No, they're gonna take the 5. And let's say they go like up here, and then it will come back to me, and I would have a 3. Well, at that point, my 3 would be going down, which I could go down from this one or this one, which would clearly not be advantageous. But if you ever get stuck with a die and you don't want the value, you can re-roll it, and then you're stuck with whatever it shows. Where in this case, that would be even worse, because a 2, I would have to move this way. And then I pretty much would have cut myself off from this one for future turns. But again, imagine we go all the way up here, and the red player would have been, not obviously staying right there. The red player would have been, maybe moving like this way, and maybe they came out that way. At that point, I would have gotten that. At that point, I could then, just X out one of their ends so that they only have at this point 2. But if they would have only had 2, then they'd only have one direction that they could go to. So you pretty much win if you can either X out, obviously, the front and the back, the head and the tail of your opponents. Of course, if they have a Hydra, then you'd have to do all of them. But the majority of the arenas, there are only 2 different attacks. The other thing is, if you can ever kind of just block your opponent in that they cannot make a legal move, then you win. And so, if the blue player would have won this arena, then the red player would then cross off one of their coins. If ever you cross off both of your coins, that means you've lost 2 out of 3, and then the other player is the winner. So that's how you play 2 Serpents. Where is it? These 2 of these arenas, I believe, play pretty much the same. No, this one has extra Hydras. This one has extra like impulsions and gets you free lines, and I believe these 2, there's 2 of each of the 3 symbols, so then they're kind of just all balanced. But then 2 of them played a little bit differently. But like I said, that's how you play 2 Serpents. Now let's check out how to play Roll and Cook. Okay, so here we have it set up for Roll and Cook Express, and I'm going to show you how kind of the skinny of it, how it works, but then I'm also going to show how to play the interactive mode with the shared mode, and I would suggest playing that unless you absolutely love the solo mode. But regardless, how does this play? Well, it plays over 8 rounds, as noted by the 8 awnings on your food truck, and at the start of each round, you will roll all of the 3 dice, and that's not a very good roll. Let's just do that, and then you write those 3 numbers in your awning. At that point, you go down the ingredient list of that round, and you can collect those ingredients. So the 4, I could grab a carrot. I could grab 2 carrots if I wanted, and I could also grab an egg, or I could take those numbers and I could go down to these ingredient tables. And with the 4s, I could take any 2 of these ingredients. With the 5, I could take any 1 ingredient here. So, you know what? Let's say I'm going to, for my 5, I'm going to take the steak. And then for my 4, I'm going to cross off my 4. And I'm going to take, I'm going to take a flour. So I'll mark that off. And my other 4, I'm going to take... I'll take this mystery ingredient bag. Okay, and then that will be the end of the round. So then we roll these again, and a 1, 2, and a 5. 1, 2, and a 5. So then I go through all these. Ah, man, if I would have known a 1, I wouldn't have taken that steak. But I want to make this beef dip sandwich. So I already have the meat. I need gravy, and for gravy, I need a mystery ingredient, which I should say. Use those to make gravy, but you also can use that as like a substitute for any 1 ingredient. So like that could be a potato, or that could be an egg if I wanted to make a crepe or whatever. So what did I choose? I don't think I've chosen anything. So I want to make this gravy. So yeah, I need flour, a mystery ingredient, and butter. Well, butter, to make that, I need a salt and milk, and so I can't get that with my ingredients, so I'll just do my 1 and my 2 for salt and milk, cross those off. So I have salt and milk. At that point, at any point, I can then transform these ingredients. So then I would cross off my salt and my milk, and I would make now butter. And what else do I need? Oh, and so even more so, I can make my gravy, because I have my butter, my mystery, and my flour. So now I have gravy. So pretty much I use all those ingredients to make. I have my meat, and my gravy, which I need that. But I still have number 5. So I could take another mystery, or I could take something from here. I'm just going to take a mystery one because I don't know what I need right now. I should also say that at the start of the game, I have one free number. So this little red dot means I can just take anything any one time. But I'm going to save that. If ever on a round, like the first round, there were 2 4s. If I didn't want those 4s, I could cross them off to gain another wild ingredient for another round. So you're pretty much just like saving 2 of this, like a pair of numbers for any one. So you can do that. But I collect all my ingredients, and then I'm going to look, and I'm going to serve 1 plate, and I'm going to serve F. And to make that, I need to have a meat. I need to use that, and gravy. And I cross that off. So if I'm playing solo, I would then circle this 5 points, and then the more of those I make would gain me more and more points. But if I'm not playing solo and I'm playing in the shared ordered mode, this would all be done secretively, and then everybody would reveal at the same time, or they would announce. We'd say, okay, what did you make? What did you serve? And everybody would then say the letter that I served. So I served F. So then I would put on the first ticket slip, I got a black marker opposed to red, blue, and green. I would put that. If no one else served that on this round, I would then get 6 points. But if me and another opponent would have done it on the same round, green, which is I think this one, then we would only get 4 points each instead of 6. So if you make something on a round where no one else makes it, you get more points, or you have to share. If ever you decide you don't want to make a dish, you want to save, you would put an X in one of those plates and you get a mystery ingredient, because then you can just use that on a further round. If on the first round, I made this, the next, if I make an F on the next round, I would go to the next slip. If ever any one of these slips are fully finished, then you would just keep putting dots of your color whenever you make those dishes, and then each of those dots would be worth 1 or 4 or 7 or what have you. But the game ends after 8 rounds, and then you add up all your points, and then whoever has the most points is the winner. You also get 1 point for any transformed ingredients. That's on this side when you need to use multiple ingredients to make something else. That will be considered a transformed ingredient. Each of those would be worth victory points at the end, and whoever has the most would be the winner. And that's how you play Roll and Cook Express. So the final game in Des Papiers is Arturus Rex, and it looks something like this. This is played over 10 rounds, unless someone finishes the quest for the Holy Grail, then it would end immediately. Each player gets 1 private die, as well as a player board and a marker. And if you're playing with less than 4 players, there's a pool to make a total of 4 dice. So on the start of each round, each player will roll a die, their private die, and they will put that number in. I'm just going to use black on both boards here, but they will put that number in their scroll. And then you would roll any of the private or the public ones. And so this player would have to put a 1 here, and then they would get to use 2 4s and a 1. So 1 4 4. This player would have to put a 4, and they would get 4 1 1. The first number that you get has to go into the Merlin quest, and you start from this scroll, and you work your way around. So Merlin kind of, in a sense, is like taking that knowledge from you immediately. Okay? And then you can go on different quests. And I'll explain how each of them work. I just want to show how, whatever you roll first, you don't get to use in other quests. It goes straight to the Merlin one, but you get to use everybody else's dice. But I'm just going to move this over and show you what these different things are. if this was my board, I'd have 2 1s and 2 4s to work with. I could add any of these numbers up to make a higher number at any point if I wanted. Why would I want to? Well, to defeat the Mordred quest, you have to start here, and it has to be a high number, and everything around there has to be lower. So if this is 12, it would be 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. I could do that. Or, I could add, this 4 and this 4 to make it 8. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No, I couldn't do that. But that you can add numbers together, because here I need to have a sum higher than 10. Okay, and so how would I do that? Well, that's how I would do that. Sometimes if I have all low numbers, but like I said, this one has to be, so this could be a 12 and then 11 and 10, and you want to work your way around. And you want to do this before around the end of 7, because if you don't defeat Mordred before the 8th round, you lose these 3 bonuses, and that could be detrimental. I've already explained how Merlin's works. He kind of steals your knowledge. Anytime you finish one of these scrolls, you would circle that bonus. That would give you that, like a virtual free die of a value of 3. But what else could I use? I could take these 2 1s and cross off 2 1s there. And if I'm ever able to free Guinevere, then that first number that I roll, instead of going to Merlin, I can then use it. So then I would be able to use all 4 numbers instead of just the 3 from my opponents. You could also, cross off different values here. So here's a 4 and a 4. So I could cross off this 4, or I could cross off this 8. If ever you cross off all the numbers in a certain village, then you get this bonus, and that's a one-time ability, much like this 3. I could then add or subtract 1 pip value in a future round, or the round that I would finish that. So that's what that is. And of course, depending on how far you are on each of these will reflect on how many points. So if I only finish this, I would get 2 points at the end. Whereas if I had finished, these 3, I would gain 12 points at the end. Okay, so those are those ones. This, I just need to allocate a die 1 or higher, and I cross it off. 2 or higher, 3 or higher, 6 or higher, and then I would gain this. Of course, I would get the 3 points at the end, but anytime you have this, like sword and shield, that's a die value of any number, 1 through 6. So then I would get any single value. And then finally here, for the Holy Grail, you have to start at the bottom, you have to work your way to the top, and every level has to be higher. So if these were all 1s, it could be 2s and 3 and 3, so on and so forth. So this is where you get, well, if you're all 4s, you're all 5s, and then you're 6. Well, something higher than 6 is obviously 7 or anything. That's when you add 2 dice values together. And then depending on how many levels you finish at the end of the game will reflect on how many points. And so there's 6 different quests that you'll be going on. You'll be kind of like pulled in 6 different directions. You can focus on a couple of them more than the others, or what have you. Kind of explore a little bit in that. But that's how you play Arturus Rex. I should say the game ends after 10 rounds, or someone captures the Holy Grail, and then you add up your 6 different quests, and then whoever has the highest would be the winner. But that's how you play Arturus Rex here in Des Papiers. So let's move on over now and check out the final forecast. So the final forecast for Des Papiers, a compilation of 3 roll and writes. I'm just going to dive into this one because I want to speak on all 3 of them. First off, I'm going to talk about components. I like it that they're in fact not paper, but boards that you can just write on with dry erase markers and wipe them off, and you can play them until your dry erase markers burn out, and then you just buy new ones. So that was a nice touch on this one. But let's dive into the 3 different games. We're going to start with 2 Serpents. I'm not an 80s kid, I'm a 90s kid, and so the whole arcade era was kind of on its way out. Although I do remember going and watching kids play Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat and all that. And, when your quarters were gone, you're done. And so this kind of is bringing that back. It's nostalgia. Each player is either the red or the blue, the red or the blue, and you lose when you lose 2 of your quarters or 2 of your coins. So I like that. This reminds me of the old cell phone game, my parents' old cell phone, where you have the little snake eating the pill and you're like moving around trying to, get points, but at the same time not go into yourself or hit the wall or whatever. That's what this reminded me of. It's kind of that, 1v1, 2 snakes going at it in this little cube, little square, and you're trying to block your opponent and they're trying to block you. And of course, depending on which of the 4 kind of arenas you're working in will reflect on how you're going to play each of the games. Because 2 of the 4 are kind of, they're just the same. But then you have one that has extra hydras, which will give you extra like heads for your dragon to make a hydra, I guess. And then the other one has the one where you get just extra lines. So then it's going to be a quicker game. You're going to kind of, get those bonuses and really move around that grid really quickly and really try to bottleneck your opponent that they can't move. I found it fun, and that little chess match when you're rolling your dice. 5s, either player can go in any direction, and 6s go at a diagonal. So I like that. And then depends on if it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4. The 1 for the one player goes down or towards the other player, whereas the 1 for the same player goes up, type deal. And so you got to watch when you're drafting your dice, what are you going to leave your opponent that they will be able to use against you? And of course, if you don't like the roll, you can re-roll, but then you're stuck with that. So it's an option, but that's kind of like a last resort. But you can definitely, like, head-to-head, hate draft in this one so that your opponent cannot use the die to force them to do that reroll and stuff. And so, for those that really like the whole arcade and just that like tight skirmish, I guess you would call it, and like that nostalgia, I think this is gonna speak to them. It says it plays in 15 minutes. I felt my plays were a little bit longer, which is fine, but for what it is, like 15 minutes should be all right. But I felt my plays were like in the 20-minute range, which again isn't terribly long, but it just felt that it was maybe a little bit longer than it should be. But overall, 2 Serpents, I think this is good. It's fun. I'm going to give it a 70% chance of meeples for this mini game or game in Des Papiers. So 70% chance of meeples for 2 Serpents. Which leads me to the second one, Roll and Cook Express. Something that I love doing. Not running a food truck, but I love cooking. I love being in the kitchen and coming up with different, creations and trying new recipes and things of sort. I love doing that. So when I sat down to play this one, I played the solo mode first to try to, get the grasp of it before I had to, teach others. And I felt that the resources were pretty tight in this one. You feel like you're going to be able to make a whole bunch of things, but in reality, I don't think you actually can the way it is because resources are quite tight. You have 3 dice to work with each round. There's 8 rounds, and you have to pick what you're going to make. And I feel that you kind of have to go into it. And the first round, you can't just willy-nilly just grab any like ingredients. You have to be like, okay, I'm going to make a cheese crepe. And then you have to work towards that. Or, I'm going to make, a salad. And you have to work towards that. It is quite tight in that regard. They don't have in the rules kind of a chart on how you're doing for the solo mode. It's on BGG. So if you're going to play this solo, I suggest checking that out because the first handful of times I played this, I didn't know how I was doing until I saw that chart, and then I realized, okay, I'm doing all right. I think to get like 5 out of 5 stars, you need like upwards of 55 points. I don't know if I've even hit 40. But like I said, because I feel that the resources are quite tight. I like the transformation of the resources where, if you want to make cheese, you have to have like milk and salt. And then you have to cross off those milk and salt ingredients, and then you'll transform it into cheese. And then you use the cheese for the crepe or for the poutine. And so I liked that. I feel that solo is alright, but this game is better when you play with the shared orders mode. Because, I don't know, I like that the best because when you're figuring out what you're going to make, you're kind of like, I wonder what my opponents are going to make. I wish there was a little bit of an indication that maybe, on each round, everybody you're playing with had to say, oh, I grabbed this ingredient or that ingredient or something. So you had a little bit of information, because if you make the same thing, so if you and I are playing and I make, a salad and you make a salad on the same, like serving the same customer, we both get points. We just kind of have to split the points or get a lower amount of points. Whereas if I would make a salad and you'd make a crepe, and no one else would make a crepe, like if you were the only one to make a certain thing, you get more points. And so I like that. I thought it was cool because you play this kind of like this. This isn't like putting it on the table and sharing what information as to what you're making. It's kind of like it's secretive, right? So I enjoyed that. It is fun to kind of outwit your opponents. At the same time, you don't necessarily know what ingredients your opponents are actually taking. And so if you're going to play Roll and Cook Express, I suggest doing that shared mode, because it is a lot of fun. Like when everybody reveals what they make, and then people are like, oh, come on, you made that as well, man, or you know what I mean, or you get that like, yes, no one else made that beef dip sandwich or whatever it is, and then you get all the points, and it's satisfying in that regard. So I did enjoy Roll and Cook Express. To me, this is a 75% chance of meeples. It was enjoyable. Solo is fun, but I would suggest playing this in the shared orders mode. So 75% chance meeples for Roll and Cook Express, which leads me to Arturus Rex, Arthurian legend, something I like. I like Shadows of a Camelot, and I like, King Arthur and whatnot. So this, to me, reminded me a little bit of Rolling Realms, in the sense that, you have kind of 6 quests that you want to do, and yet I feel that you're being pulled into 6 different directions. And I really like that. I thought it was really neat, actually, that on each round, everybody has, a private die. You roll that, and then you have to use that one for the Merlin quest. But everybody else gets to use that on any quest that they want. And so I like that, because I feel that, say I roll a 6. Man, I really want a 6 in some of these other quests, but I can't use that in those quests. Merlin kind of takes it. But the balancing is that, I fill up all my Merlin scrolls quicker if I'm rolling all these high numbers each round, and then I'm getting added dice and victory points along the way. And so I like that tension of, do you quickly save Guinevere so that you can use all of those dice each round, so that you don't have to, your first, die roll doesn't have to go straight to Merlin? Or do you right away race to do the Mordred, to finish that quest? Because if you don't before the end of round 7, you kind of lose 3 bonuses, and those 3 bonuses, could help you win the game. But then at the same time, it's like, the Holy Grail, if I quickly race through the Holy Grail, where my other opponents are trying to do other things, and I'm, doing the quest for the Holy Grail, and I finish that, regardless if it's whatever round it is, that cuts the game off, and then that ends the game. Or, do you do the one, I don't know what it is, the one in the corner with the villages? If you every time you fill a village, you get then a bonus that you can add or subtract a die value, like 1 to a die value, so that you can manipulate a die to then use in other quests. And so I feel that it's always kind of like that balance of like, okay, which quest do I want to work on, and where do I allocate the different dice? So I really like that one. I like the bonuses that you can have each round, and then defeating Mordred gets you those 3 extra bonuses that could win you or lose you the game. So this one I like the most. I wish there was a solo chart in this one, but there definitely isn't. But yeah, lost my train of thought there. But yes, Arturus Rex was my favorite of the 3. I'm going to give that one an 80% chance of meeples. And so for rounding it all up, what do I think of Des Papiers as a whole? I think this has 3 little neat little family roll and writes, where one of them is just for 2 players, but the other 2 offer some fun choices, and they play differently. One, you're going on quests and you're kind of being split in 6 different directions, whereas the other one, yes, you're being split to make different types of food, but it kind of has you be like, oh, I'm going to go grocery shopping, and what am I going to get? And what am I going to make? And how am I going to transform those ingredients into other ingredients to make other dishes? And so overall, I think Des Papiers is a fun box of roll and writes. I'm going to give it a 75% chance of meeples for all 3 of them combined. So yeah, 75% chance of meeples for Des Papiers. My name is Brent. Until next time, grab your umbrella. The forecast is cloudy with a chance of meeples.